Hey everyone, and welcome to Boston Autoblog. In 2021, used car prices are rising. Whether you're looking at buying a consumer vehicle or a sports car, it's going to end in the same result. But also, it's difficult to find a car that's available on inventory for you to see in person, test drive, and possibly purchase on the same day. And thankfully, I was able to find this beautiful BMW M2 to experience and test drive for myself, but also a car that I can feature on the channel, one that I've been waiting to feature for quite some time. I know a number of BMW M2 owners that have been telling me for quite a while, saying, Mike, this is the last true M car. You're gonna have a blast behind the wheel. And that's why I am here to experience one and also see why it just might be one of the best BMW M cars in the modern era. Now, before I get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Herb Chambers BMW Sudbury in Sudbury, Massachusetts for allowing me to do this review. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive BMW inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. So we are now behind the wheel of the BMW M2, and cars like this are pretty rare. Not speaking about the M2 itself, but rather having sports coupes that are affordable and fun to drive. The sound that resonates from that 3-liter inline 6, it sounds so good. Now let's get to the performance numbers for a minute. You're talking 365 horsepower with the N55, and this might be a bit crass from me for saying something like this, but when the competition came out, everyone forgot about this particular model. It was as if that the horsepower was everything that this car needed. And in my opinion, horsepower and straight line performance is such a American measurement of quality and fun behind the wheel. This particular model is really quite enjoyable because you have a car that's small, but the steering input is so direct and tight. It's tighter than anything I've experienced from other BMWs that I reviewed on the channel. You have very nice aggressive 10 and 2 positions on the steering wheel. Also, what's really nice as well in the modern age is that we do have an infotainment system, that's the iDrive 6, but you don't have digital gauges. And that's what's really nice. So you have a nice balance of old school, but also that technology as well. And so many BMWs now have full digital gauge clusters. They have the nice iDrive 7 system. And for some buyers, and even Car and Driver said that the interior was a bit lackluster. But I find it interesting though, that cars that have supposed lackluster interiors or also very stiff suspensions tend to be the cars that enthusiasts love to drive. And I can totally see why people were lining up for the M2 because this is fantastic. Now, I have driven the new M4. I have driven a number of the new BMWs that are performance oriented, but this feels like a sense of rawness, something that I have not experienced from the newer BMWs at all. This is pretty special. Now, the suspension is stiff, so you do feel a sense of connection to the car and also the road as well. This is what driving, to me, is all about, especially at this price range. When you're looking at a car around $50,000, there's not too many out there that's going to rival what the M2 has, especially on the used car market. I can totally see why these have really appreciated over the last year and a half or so. Last year, I was at home, of course, like everyone else, and I was looking at these cars to buy, and they were right around $42,000, and now they're up to $50,000. And I do wish that I had purchased one back then because this is really fantastic. You feel every corner, and it doesn't feel as computerized. So many people were up in arms over the M2 because it moved away from the hydraulic steering rack. And yet, this feels so planted, it feels so direct. It's so nice. Now, as of late, a lot of people have been saying that the M2 is a spiritual successor to the E30. But I would like to think of it as being the spiritual successor to the E46, because this is a car that's around the same size as the older M3s. When you look at the M3s now, they're massive, they're huge cars. Even the F80 was about 5 inches longer than this M2. So the cars were a lot bigger. They weren't as small and nimble as this is. And this is just really enjoyable. On these nice back roads with tight corners, I could do this all day. I can see why some of my friends who own M2s have an absolute blast going up to New Hampshire or taking on the mountain roads up in Vermont, because you feel fully planted. You feel very connected at all times. And what's really great too is that you don't have that technology drawing you away from the road and the corners that lie ahead of you. So I'm now in manual mode. I want to see what this dual clutch automatic is made of. That is nice. That is really nice. And it's in manual mode where I feel this car becomes far more engaging. Because when you have it in automatic, you're kind of just going with the flow, and it becomes a modern day daily driver for a sports car like this. Whereas in manual mode, it becomes more aggressive. The gear shifts get far more aggressive, where you do get that pushback in your seat. What I also like too is that the M2 is playful. You can have some fun with it. Now, of course, I do have traction control on because this car would be no use to BMW Sudbury if it hit a tree. But this car feels planted. It feels very fun. And I just can't help but smile while I'm driving this around. There's a sense of rawness. And, you know, with the newer BMWs, you have a ZF 8-speed automatic transmission where it is very smooth. The gear shifts are crisp. Whereas with the dual clutch, there is a bit of some action there where you do get that pushback, you get that feedback. And to me, it actually adds a lot to this car. It adds some character. And I don't know, I mean, I'm a big fan of the ZF 8-speed, but with the M2, it pairs up very nicely. And you know, you listen to some people who test drive a F82 or F80 for the first time, and they're not huge fans of the dual clutches, but it actually pairs up very well with the M2 and this inline six. Supplementing the BMW M2's great driving dynamics and handling is a road presence that's quite iconic, one in which will age very gracefully and is aging very gracefully, and I do think this coupe will be an all-time classic and very highly coveted within the next few years, whether it has an N55 or S55 motor under the hood. More importantly, for enthusiasts, specifically for BMW, you have the smaller kidney grills. You also have a front fascia that's very similar to the M3 and M4, but I'd argue that with its driving dynamics, it's a better car than the F80 and F82. You also have sharper body lines on the side profile that integrates into the rear fascia. Then on our model, we have a 2018, so we have that minor cosmetic facelift, where we have a very aggressive lower portion of the front bumper, and also we have full LED headlights and taillights for a modern appearance. Also on our model, we have carbon fiber bits found throughout the exterior for a more aggressive look. Then as you make your way around to the rear third of the M2, this is really where I feel this car becomes legendary in design. It follows the footsteps of its predecessor, the 1 Series. But also more importantly, this car came out in an era where the Germans were more than happy to make all their cars look exactly the same. So like Audi, the A4, A6, and A8 all look the same. Mercedes-Benz, the C-Class, E-Class, and S-Class are all different variations of the same design. And then BMW, of course, the 3 Series, 5 Series, and 7 Series all have similar cosmetic styling. But at this particular point in time for BMW, the M2 and M6 were the only ones that really truly stood out. And that's why a lot of BMW M2 owners are prideful of this car, because it stands out, it's unique, it's special, and it looks like it drives. Also letting you know that this is a driver's car, and of course some people would disagree on this, is the fact that the interior is very minimalistic. So simplistic, in fact, that all you have for the center console is a sport and comfort button to go along with your gear shifter and traction control on and off switch. Now, when it comes to the infotainment system, you will have BMW's iDrive 6 system with the 2018 model, so you can actually use this screen as a touchscreen. But I prefer using the rotary dial, touchpad, and quick access buttons to help keep my eyes on the road, but also, more importantly, keep my hands on the wheel as well. Then as you look down to the dashboard, you will have 2 rows of buttons, very similar to what we see with BMWs even in the lineup today. So the first row of buttons will be for your radio presets, then the second is for your climate control, your AC, and 3-level heated seats. Then when you take a look at the center console, you will have a wireless phone charging pad that adjusts the size of your smartphone. But I do think, though, that if these phones start getting any bigger, this charging pad will be pretty useless. You will have a USB input as well. Now for the second row seats, this actually isn't that bad at all. Now I am sitting behind myself at 5'5", and I'm pretty comfortable. I have a good amount of legroom to work with here. So I do think that if you are on the height of 5'8" or 5'9" as the driver or front passenger, and you have an average size adult in the second row, I think it could totally work for sure. Also back here, you will have a nice little compartment for your smartphone, so that doesn't get thrown around. Also, you will have 2 rear air vents and a 12-volt outlet. Now coming around to the back for the rear cargo area, you will have enough room for groceries and smaller items, but more importantly, I was able to fit all my camera gear today, which includes 2 bags of luggage, a gimbal box, and also 2 tripods. So that was really impressive. But also this car is deceptive from the outside because it looks like a small sports coupe and doesn't look very conducive for whatever you're going to be doing throughout the week. But also when you step inside, the car seems pretty small, and then when you check out the rear seats, you can actually fit 2 average size adults if you're not very tall. So this car is actually pretty spacious for what it is, and that's why I do think you could daily drive this in warmer climates. If you live in Florida or California, this car is enough for sure, especially if you live by yourself. But also if you do go on a road trip with a significant other, you can fit probably 3 to 4 bags of luggage back here. And I know people who've gone on road trips with this car and also have done a European delivery and checked out all of Europe. So I know that this car is conducive for longer road trips, and also if you have more than one person with you on a drive. So this car to me is perfect in many ways and totally worth the price, because you have the performance, you have the driving dynamics, but also you actually have a decent amount of practicality, whereas some sports coupes are going to be pretty tight for a daily driver. Also with having a nice simplistic interior is that all you really have is the driving dynamics, and the M2 does not disappoint in that regard. And that's why I think this car is a diamond in the rough, even though I can't believe I'm saying that. This car is very special, but a lot of enthusiasts have moved on to the competition. The competition is all they talk about. And it's so interesting to hear that from so many journalists and enthusiasts who, you know, back in 2016 were in love with this car. It was the E46 of the modern age. And then the competition comes out and really that gets all thrown out the window and just everyone wants to drive that. And I understand that. The S55 is from the M3 and M4, but the N55, in my opinion, sounds a lot better. And to me, it provides enough performance where I'm not begging for more. And isn't that what it's all about? When you drive cars of this size, you want to have that performance, you want to have that torque, but you don't want to have so much power where you can't have fun. When you look at where the S55 and what that's done to the competition, the car is pretty powerful. It's very difficult to not get yourself into trouble. Whereas on some winding back roads with this car, I noticed that when I did push it, I wasn't necessarily breaking speed limits, and I could have a lot of fun on those back roads without drawing too much attention to myself, and I can appreciate that, and that's something that I love about cars this size and with this power. we get so caught up in the performance numbers for new sports cars now, where I think we're kind of losing and forgetting what sports cars were all about and what they are all about. And that's why I feel that this car is going to be remembered to be a very special one in which will be a collector's item for sure, just because when you have a car that can perform really well, that has a more analog and old school layout with a mixture of technology, there's not a lot of cars like that out there anymore, especially in this price range. This car is fantastic in every way. And yes, I'm sure that some of you are going to say, well, I'd rather have the competition. But if you're looking to save money, if you're looking for a car that is going to give you a raw sensation, one in which is nimble, that's fun to drive, that's quick in the corners, you can just throw it around, and have a little bit of wiggle room where the tail end does kick out a bit if you want to have some fun, then this is the car for you. This is really the car that I think a lot of old school enthusiasts are gonna love, and it's really one of the last cars that you can buy like this, especially in 2021. So to me, I say that if you are looking at buying a new sports car or a newish sports car in 2021 and you're looking for something that can give you some great feedback and also give you more of a stiffer suspension, one in which you will be feeling all the bumps and imperfections, then I think the M2 is actually a better buy than the F80 and F82 M3 and M4. I think you're going to have a lot more fun with this for sure. So in closing, the BMW M2 was everything I was hoping for and more. In fact, it's very difficult for me to walk away from this car and not put an offer on it, as the driving dynamics and handling were phenomenal, and nothing like I've ever experienced with modern BMWs over the last 2 years on this channel. I've driven the new G82 M4, I've driven the M340i, M440i, M850i, and none of them come close to what the M2 is offering. Now, some of that can be related and attributed to the fact that this car is smaller, but also the steering ability, it gives you a lot of feedback. And even though I'm a big fan of the ZF 8-speed automatic transmissions that are now in newer BMWs, the 7-speed dual clutch was a blast to drive and to roll through the gears. And that's why I think that this car will be seen as a classic moving forward and in the future, just because what this car represents. Now, even though you're going to want to go with the S55 and the M2 competition with the more aggressive seats, but also the better performance, if you are looking to save money and you want to go with just a regular M2, this car is a blast to drive. It really, truly is enjoyable, but also more importantly, as we learned during this review, that it's actually somewhat practical, that you can fit 2 average-sized adults in the second row and also have enough cargo space where you can load up with some luggage and go on a road trip with a significant other. This car is perfect. It's a great daily driver, maybe if you live in Florida or California, but it's enjoyable to drive every single minute when you're behind the wheel, and that's why I would say that this car is very special. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.